What's up, everybody? We are here on day two of demystifying Halloween. And what that means is basically making it clear because there's a lot of misunderstandings, there's a lot of interpretations, things that have been said throughout generations. So we just want to demystify it. We want to clear things up so that we know um, from a clear vantage point from where we are now, since our perspective is different now, like so that we can discern for ourselves what we think, so that we can get this information and then go, okay, this sounds right, or this doesn't, or let me research deeper. So basically, witches is what we're going to talk about today. Let me make sure everything is good. Okay. Witches. Okay. This to me, I love because when I grew up in a Catholic religion, and at the same time, I was asking a lot of questions. And one of the first things that I searched, if we were going to say in a rabbit hole, that if I got into a rabbit hole, what hole was it? It was witches. I wanted to understand why at such a young, like, I don't know how old I was, but at a young age, I was very confused why people were, or why there was the whole witch trials and why there was the burning of the witches. I'm like, why are they burning witches? And there's the whole, oh, because they're evil. But there's always two sides of a story. My moon is in Gemini, so I'm going to look at both sides of the coin. So of course I'm going to be wanting to research the side of the witches. Okay, what does that mean, so that I can better understand where this evil thing is coming from. Like, let me discern for myself. I'm not the type of person that just takes something that someone says and then believes it. I do my own research. I have my own discernment, etc. So I remember at a young age that my entire family basically would say, drink this with some garlic and put some honey with this and some onion and do this. And like all these homeopathic herbal type of things that were meant for healing that was brought on from generation to generation. So when I started researching about witches and their connection to nature and to herbs and to healing, that's why I was like, my family does this. So is this bad? Right? That's where, as a young child, you start to go, okay, I want to understand better because it's just not connecting. The pieces aren't connecting. And so I came across this post that was written by, let me tell you who it was written by, Thea Forstrom. And I thought it was very, like, I felt it. So I was like, let me read it as a way to begin today's workshop. And so here it goes. It says, it was not witches who burned, it was women. And this was shared by Rachel Christina. Women who were seen as too beautiful, too outspoken, had too much water in the well. Yes, seriously. Who had a birthmark. Women who were too skilled with herbal medicine, too loud, too quiet. Women who had a strong nature connection. Women who danced, women who sung, or anything else really, basically that high vibration. Any woman was at risk burning in the 1600s. Sisters testified and turned on each other when their babies were held under ice. Children were tortured to confess their experiences with witches by being executed in ovens. Women were held underwater, and if they float, they were guilty and executed. And if they sunk and drowned, they were innocent. Women were thrown off cliffs. Women were put in deep holes in the ground. The start of this madness was years of famine, war, religions, and lots of fear. The churches said that witches, demons, and the devil did exist, and women were nothing but trouble. As we see even today, there is often a scapegoat created and the chaos escalated. In Sweden, when the Bible became law and everything that did not line up with what the church said became lethal. The Bible fantasism killed thousands of women. Everything connected to a woman became feared, especially her sexuality. It became labeled as dark and dangerous and was the core of the witch trials throughout the world. Why do I write this? Because I think the usage of words are important, especially when we are doing the work to pull these murky, repressed, and forgotten about stories to the surface. Because knowing our history is important when we are building the new world, when we are doing the healing work of our lineage and as women. To give the women who were slaughtered a voice, to give them redress and a chance of peace. It was not witches who burned, it was women. And I thought that was really deep.
Dude, I am having chills like throughout my body, but while you were reading that, Joanna, I felt like I was going to start crying. Like I got so emotional. I have my tissues right here because I'm just like,
I'm having to fight through it as I'm saying it.
Oh my gosh. Like, can you please send that to me, or did you have it posted? I know you said Rachel Christina did.
Yeah, I did repost it on my page, but I can resend it to you.
Yes, because I need that. And I am like, I've got like energy flowing through me right now that is like insane. And I'm talking, it is like chill to the bone.
Yeah, because they're all like, hell yeah. Like we, and we are the same people reincarnated, wanting to fight back for what was taken, and our censorship and our wanting to heal, and this goes back to
I know, I can't stop having those chills.
Right? The cold, I feel it too. And it's that whole the hierarchy of man. And when they started the whole medicine and the Bible, making the man be have that hierarchy because of a misunderstanding, because of the way that it's written, it became this. If we allow them to continue to heal, how will they lean on us to help them, right? Because they were the doctors that were now men, that were the medicine, big pharma, all of that started to take on since early on, but they had to kind of let go of all of the wisdom and all of the knowledge that had been gathered throughout the ages, because really it's kind of just one other form. To me, I look at it as it's just another religion. Like there's Wicca, paganism, there's Buddhism, there's Islam, right? There's Christianity. There's just pick and choose. But at the same time, they're all related and they all are coming from the same thing. It's just they're on different levels of it all, but it's all the same. And I didn't realize that until after learning syncretism, that I saw, because I had this book that when I used to do makeup, I was a makeup artist. And I had this one girl who had one of the symbols on her necklace. And she said, yes, I'm a witch. And so to me, it caught me off guard because I had never seen somebody say I'm a witch, right? Because in my mind, a witch, right? We all think of the pointy hat, the whatever. Not that that's what I was thinking, but mostly that's just where your mind goes because of the conditioning. So when she said that, I was like, well, she looks nothing like she's normal, And so, of course, not that I didn't have judgment, but it just caught me off guard. And so she gave me this book. I was working with her for like 3 days on set. And so she came back and she gave me this book, and I've kept it for years and years and years and years. And it's thick. And I've read it throughout. I'll pull it out here and there just to try to better understand it. Most people would say, oh, if you read that, you're whatever. No, I have my own discernment. I can choose to follow or not, right? And now as I look back at it again, I'm finding things in here that I'm like, whoa, I didn't understand before, but they're normal. Like as in,
well, what is the definition? What is the true definition of a witch?
Okay, so here we go. So, so Wicca comes from the Old English word wicket, or wick. I don't know how to say it. WICCE, which means wise or wisdom. So really, it's a wise woman. Karma and the threefold law is something that witches, because you can decide, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to baptize myself and I'm going to be Baptist. And so now I'm telling the church that now I am Baptist, right? I am now following whatever it is, I am declaring it, right? You could do the same thing and say, okay, now I declare to be a witch or to follow Wicca or whatever. You can declare that. Me, I'm an independent person. I don't follow nothing. I'm God. That's it. Right. And so, but I can get all the information from everything and see for myself how it all connects, right? So whatever you send out, this is something that I remember when I was young going, wow, this is one of their main things, the threefold law, the karma, right? Whatever you send out into the world, that's a thought, a word, a deed, or anything, magic, it comes back to you 3 times the strength or 3 times the quantity. So this law applies both equally to your negative behavior and as well as positive. Like we said, it's all about the intention. So it's whether it's deliberate or not, right? And that to me was one of those main things, was like, okay, well, I don't want to wish somebody bad if it's going to be multiplied times 3 and come back to me, right? And so when it's come to karma, that little bit, that's what I took from from learning about him. I took from that, whatever you put out is going to come back to you. And that's helped me to be responsible of myself and what I put out there, right? I don't want to wish anybody harm. Anytime something bad happens, somebody did me wrong, I'm like, karma's got it. I'm not going to wish them anything, right? So is that bad? Is that evil? No, but there are people that get this information, the power that comes with knowing, with understanding, with being in tune with nature and the elements, and then using it for wrong, using it for bad, using it for evil. So there is good and there's bad. So there's good witches, there's bad witches. So witches were wise women. They use herbs, homeopathic tools to heal, like many of us do today. You would basically be considered a witch, most likely, if you're here. I mean, pretty much, like, we all kind of do this in some way, shape, or form. And I found it fascinating that they used the elements throughout everything. And yet now I have them tattooed on me because of the Bible. Like, hold up, I tattooed myself with elements because of the Bible. And now I'm seeing the connection to the fact that they use elements all the time. There's a connection. There's a connection to it all because the Bible uses earth, water, air, fire. We are made of earth, water, air, fire, ether, all of that stuff. So let's look at witches, but I just want to go into the holy days real quick before we have like a little discussion. Because one of the 8 holy days that we are pretty much celebrating is Samhain, right? Thank you for telling us, Nicole, why it's Samhain. Now I feel much better when I say it. So the 8 holy days, they are Imbolc. Now, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, so I'm sorry. Imbolc, which would be February 1st. So there's 4 Sabbats, and then of the greater Sabbats and then the lesser Sabbats. So the lesser would be the spring equinox, March 21st, which is right here. Then we have the summer solstice. Actually, let me click. The summer solstice. We have the fall equinox. We have the winter solstice. And then the other ones are the cross quarter days, the fixed signs. So here we have May 1st, sorry, May Day. We have August 1st, fixed signs of the zodiac. We have November 1st, and we celebrate the Hallows Eve, the night before, October 31st. And then we have Aquarius, the fixed sign, on February 1st. So the 8 holy days that are represented here as Imbolc, spring equinox, Beltane, summer solstice, the Lugnasta, fall equinox, and Samhain are the 8 fixed signs, or not the 8, the 4 fixed signs that make up, if you want to relate this to the Bible, which I do, in Ezekiel, when it talks about the 4 faces of God, how it's like the face of a bull, the face of a lion, the face of a man, and the face of an eagle. So just right there with the Mazzaroth, which is the zodiac, which is in Job 38:32, it is showing you the holy days, the saint days. Why? Because you have the beginning, the opening of the spring, right? Of the season. You have the beginning, opening of the summer, the beginning, opening of fall, the beginning, opening of winter, and then what is fixed within that. And so you have to look at basically the sun, the rays of the sun, and what it's showing you is that all of this is holy. Like, this is what it's showing you, is that it's holy. And I found it fascinating that here we are, Halloween, celebrating basically one of the holy days. And the same thing goes in all other religions or other what traditions or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I thought that was so interesting and wanted to share that. What are your takes or what's your history or what's your take on witches? Like, what is it? Your opinion? Anybody? Anybody want to share?
Well, I'll share.
I'm like, I thought you wanted to share.
You know, growing up, Halloween, it's always about the programming of like candy, you go trick-or-treating, you dress up, like you don't learn the true meaning of what it truly is. I didn't learn what the true meaning of a lot of things are until recently, which is really super cool. But it's my experience is that like when I started on my healing journey, the herbs and the oils and the tinctures and nature and meditation, that was also much a part of my journey, which it still is, and it will always forever be. But I was blessed enough to have a past life quantum healing hypnosis. And during that time, I traveled to one of my lifetimes where I was a little girl and I was taken for what they thought was witchcraft when it was just healing with my mammy and I, which was my grandmother. We lived like on a river's bed. And so we would make just I want to say potions, but it wasn't. It was like just little tinctures in a way, using flowers and plants. But I was taken, and throughout the session, I didn't see my death. Because I think it was going to be too traumatic. So basically, I knew I was taken, and then I knew I was with God. And so I knew I had died because of what we were doing. And then what you read to me, oh my God, it hit me like if I was like living it all over again type of thing. So I know that now that, like, as far as the term witches being wise women, it's just people were scared of the power that we hold as a feminine, and our ability to create life within us. And that is extremely, and I'm saying powerful not as like, oh yeah, we're better. No. I'm just saying it's a pretty awesome miracle that we can give birth, that we can create and hold life within us. And then that comes through, life comes through us. I think that's just so spectacular. And I think like that can threaten back in the day when all this happened, threatening. And so it's pretty sad. It's pretty sad because I feel like a lot of things have happened where women don't celebrate that part of them. I know I never really celebrated the fact that even when you're talking about your cycle and how it's
connected to the moon.
Yes, thank you. I was looking for the right word. Thank you. So it's like, and I never knew that. So I didn't celebrate that part of me. I was more like, oh God, let's get this over with. You know what I mean?
And there's a lot of people that think like, oh, if you do like anything with moon, oh, like that's evil. But it's like, how is the moon, which is in nature, which is in the first page, I think Genesis 1:1, or maybe, I don't know. It's in Genesis, but basically like that here it is providing you with phases and light and part of you, and yet it's, how can it be, you know what I'm saying? How can it be evil?
Well, yeah. And just like with how you've helped us with breaking down the fact that the zodiac, the Mazzaroth, it's seasons, but it's also within our day, our 24 hours. And then when you start thinking of the seasons and you start really understanding what the seasons are, spring, rebirth, summer is that playful time, that fall is like starting to go into, harvest.
Letting go.
Yes. And then winter is that death. It doesn't mean death, a physical death. It just means that it's time for you to hibernate so you can come back in the spring. And so it's like,
And heal.
Yes, if you view these things this way, which totally makes sense to me, I think everybody would just be more connected to each other, but also their physical bodies.
Yeah.
They'd be connected to nature, connected to what's going on in the stars, and then as well as what's going on in their body.
I mean, because honestly, the only place where I hear that witches are bad, it just comes from religion. But I don't know. Does it say in the book, in the Bible, that witches are witches, the actual word witches?
Tell us, RL.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it stems from two different things: the indoctrination of religion and also the patriarchy, which has kind of been conjured up from religion. So, I mean, the idea of witches goes back like centuries, beyond centuries. You know what I'm saying? I have some notes that I'll go through. I just didn't want to flood the whole presentation with me.
No. Go ahead, because I was just gonna look at the history. So you got it. Go.
All right. So if you look at just a few different things from the Bible, Deuteronomy 18:10-12 says, "No one shall be found among you who makes a son or daughter pass through fire, who practices divination, or is a soothsayer, or an augur, or a sorcerer, or one that casts spells, or who consults ghosts or spirits, or who seeks oracles from the dead, for whoever does these things is abhorrent to the Lord." Exodus 22:18 says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Samuel 1 says, "Hath cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land," suggesting that sorcery should lead to exile. So those are just...
What Bible version is that one, RL?
That's the Hebrew Bible.
Okay. I'm curious, you know what?
Now here's the kicker though. It's like the entitlement, and I'm not just picking on Christians here because we'll get to some other ones too, but the entitlement of Christians to think that their metaphysics are more important and accepted than other metaphysics, because Jesus, according to all this, was a sorcerer, was a
diviner,
witch,
prophecy,
wizard, whatever you want to call it.
prophet.
He's healing people, he's rising from the dead, he's speaking to the dead, he's doing all these different things. But that's okay. Those metaphysics are okay. But anything else outside of that is not okay. You know what I'm saying? So that's always been one of my biggest arguments. It's like, you want to cast metaphysics as this taboo thing, but the entirety of your religion is metaphysics.
Exactly.
So, doesn't make any sense.
So, Joanna.
Yeah.
So I think I, like you, was raised Catholic, and the first sin of Eve plays into that. She wanted knowledge and she grabbed the apple, and that was the downfall of man. So I think that's why through the ages people have been afraid of women who did that. And that's kind of where the witches came from. If you had any kind of knowledge that somebody else didn't have, or you could heal someone with herbs, or you could do any of these things, then you were considered evil.
And that was placed based on the conditioning of the construct of the church, of the religion itself, by allowing people to believe that it was literally meant that. So because everybody believes that this literally happened in that way, there's the downfall of it all, because then it takes you down a different route of what it truly means. Because the whole sin of Eve and the whole apple is totally not about that it's not literal in a sense, in that way. And we went over the entire, what was it, Michelle? Like the first 3 chapters of Genesis, with the true interpretation of what it's really saying metaphysically, which has, I can't even go into it because it's so much, but it's basically all about the atom, our atomic nature. Like we are all atoms. And so it's like falling from the non-physical into the physical, where we basically go from being in the garden to being out of the garden in the physical form. But again, male and female has been taken like that, like a hierarchy, but it doesn't signify that. Like the female means spirit, the male means the mind, but everybody has read it as though it's actual male and female versus what it's truly saying, because it's a spiritual book, not a literal one.
Well, then you have to look at the patriarchy in that. Like, number one, why has it got to be Eve that supposedly caused the downfall of man? Why is Eve created through the man, which goes completely against nature? So like all those different aspects go into the conditioning of thinking that a woman with power, a woman with knowledge, a woman who's at one with nature is considered a witch and should be banished, exiled, and burnt to the stake. You know what I'm saying? Just
being taken from the rib of Adam is right there as if she's lesser than, right? Because it comes from the man, when that's not how it works, right? So right there, it's an atom. You take an electron from an atom and you get multiplication. You create, creation. It's the multiplication of atoms. Right. So when you look at it that way, and you look at all the other, Adonis, Atum, Adam, like all of these things, it's all telling us that it's the creation of life within an atom, and not really a woman and a man and a snake. And, that's all the sine wave, right? The snake is the sine wave. It's also the energy. It's also what you see in the caduceus and the kundalini. So it's so many other things versus what everybody has been programmed to believe, in order to take that route of let's believe this and go with it, and don't seek that information, because then you'll become evil, because that's not it. When we are the tree of life of good and evil, and we get to choose in this dimension what we want to experience, good or bad, because we're just experiencing it. But anyway, so I'm sorry, that kind of went, but
no, it's good stuff.
I think that explanation had to be explained that way for people to understand a little bit more and deeper. I think that was great.
I mean, if it's understood, it's kind of hard to understand when you don't know all these things or haven't studied all these things, right? It's kind of like more confusing actually, because it's like, wait, what? So maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but it's definitely like a seed.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what, like with the QE Academy, I mean, that's what we do. We break it down. What you break it down for all of us, for us to understand, is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I think it all comes down to power. I think the powers of this world that have indoctrinated everybody with these religions, these control tactics, they don't want us to understand the power that we truly hold and the power that we have access to. So that's why they put things like this in place, or interpret Holy Scriptures in this way. So people, they look at it as, something bad.
You live in fear that way. Yeah, like
exactly.
I used to be thinking, oh, I'm not supposed to know this stuff. Like if you look at this stuff, then you're bad, like, because that's what they they make you believe until you look at it and you go, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with this. You know, it's like you have to step outside of that fear. And once you see it and you have your own discernment and you realize, okay, this is nothing at all like what it is. They want you to stay away from astrology. Why? Astrology is covered all inside the Bible. Why are they making you stay away from it?
Before the Bible.
Because, right. Because if you connect the pieces and you see it for what it is, then it's you power. Understand and you have power over them, you know, because you have power of yourself versus allowing them to control you and be powerless because they take away all the pieces so that you can't see that you have the power.
I mean, look, there's an entire, I mean, we're talking about Halloween, right? Like, you know, that's based off of fear. There's an entire movie genre that is the #1 genre in the world. Well, besides porno, that's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
The most popular genre in the world, that's horror movies, right? That have made millions upon millions of dollars on, you know, looking at witchcraft and things of that nature and black magic and all these different things as this just taboo, extremely scary thing. When at the end of the day, if you break it down, you know, to its biomimicry, it's energy. Right. It's our energy. And the intent of that energy, regardless of who you are, is going to determine whether or not something good or something bad happens.
And tomorrow we're going to talk about society's point of view and talk about what is divination and divinity and prophecy and like all those words that are attached to this that could be taken in so many different ways. Because there is so many like demystifying that needs to happen when it comes to these words. And with witches, like I do want to say, like, just like you just said, like it's a duality. It's not even about witches. It's a duality with everything. It's the intention behind it. So yes, there is black magic, but we're going to talk about magic tomorrow. There is white magic, which is what we do, which is, you know, life.
We're gonna talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah. He's like, I want to say all the things. But look, 1/4 of all the candy sold annually in the US is purchased for Halloween. So I know RL, you're all about like, let's look at the money, right? Like look at the money in candy and look at how candy is bad for us. Like look at how they use this time not only to instill evil or fear, I should say, into people, but also as young kids, here, let's give you these treats, right? These are treats, but really they're just future, what's the D word? Future diabetes, right? It's just future diabetes. That's you're programming them to eat. Yeah, it's like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but look at all the money that's purchased for Halloween. Like now that I know all this and that I've changed, it's really hard for me to do the whole trick-or-treating thing and give kids candy because I feel like I'm poisoning them. Like, I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to be part of that.
Give them a toothbrush.
And just remember, like growing up, I don't know if you guys all did go trick-or-treating because I did. And that's like, if you went to someone and they gave you popcorn or an apple, you're like, ew.
Right.
you know, you're like, oh, that's not a good treat.
Even though
the big old Three Musketeer bars.
Even though apples and apple bopping, or what is it when you put your, that was one of the help me out, you can't even, traditions that started back then with witches, you know, with the apples, because it's like the apple, it's like the toroidal field, right? It's the, like, just like this, all the magic is harvest. Like, that's why it's magical, because it's in the shape of that toroidal field, which is us. We're in the shape of, it's like another fractal of it, right? So it's like learning how magnetism works, how magnetism works. And so the apples were one of the main, you know, magic rituals. But anyway, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So just for those that were paying attention, what was known as a wise woman?
Witch.
And this was pretty interesting. Candy corn was originally called chicken feed because corn is what was used to feed chickens. So the creation was called chicken feed, and the box was marked with a colorful rooster. How funny is that?
That's hilarious.
So yeah. So anything else about witches? Tomorrow we're gonna do society's point of view and all the words that come attached to it, and everything that you want to say, RL.
Oh, no, I got some notes that is okay. So what is tomorrow about?
So tomorrow is.
So I see if I should save some of this stuff.
Wait,
Society's point of view. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll look at these words: divine, prophecy, divinity, channeling,
Okay.
and some other stuff, and go from there as far as like the perception of it and
Okay.
society, and things like that. Who didn't grow up watching? What was the witch?
Bewitched, Samantha.
Bewitched. Yeah,
Samantha.
yeah. Like,
I love that show.
right. And then I grew up watching Charmed like over and over and over. And now understanding what I know now, I go back and I'm like, wow, I learned a lot from the show because it was talking about real stuff. It's not just like witch stuff, like real stuff, like things about nature and the way things work.
And the
Like,
clairsenses.
Right. I'm like, all this is like real, and they just make it into fantasy and good versus evil and all this stuff. It's like, we're just trying to be the best versions of ourselves. If you don't want to be, don't, but
100%.
some of us do,
I think a little bit of society's perception depends on where you live in the country. I currently live in Massachusetts, where if I told someone I was a witch, it wouldn't be taken like I lived in Texas 5 years ago. And the first time I told someone I was a witch in Texas, I thought they were going to faint on me. So you know what I'm talking about, Ramon. Like, because you're in the Bible Belt, but there's a misconception about what witches are and what we do. And after that first time, I'm not sure I told anyone for like 5 or 10 more years that I was a witch, because even after I tried to explain what Wicca was to someone, those misconceptions come up. You're evil, you're casting spells on people. And that's not what it is. You're just trying to explain to them it's believing in a higher power, but you're doing it in nature. And they just
they put that guard up or the wall up of I don't want to understand.
Right.
Yep.
And did you grow up?
Well, look at you now. You're telling everybody.
I know. I'm like, I want to know more. Please, let's talk about you.
No, I mean, I said I grew up Catholic. I had an aunt who read tarot cards, and my grandmother would take us over there, and they would go in the closet for her to read my grandmother's tarot cards. So it was something that was hidden. And I started questioning probably, I guess I was in my teens or my early 20s, that Catholicism wasn't for me. I was just trying to figure out what was. And Ramon knows this, I make soap. And so I would have these herbs and all of these essential oils and everything else, making soaps for a specific purpose, for healing or for relaxation and things like that. And I kind of grew that way into what I believe now.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it.
There's no separation there. Like, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a difference. I mean, it's not governed by specific rules and boundaries and all that stuff. It's like it's all one. It just promotes
like universal rules.
Exactly, we're all one. It's a beautiful thing. That's awesome.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you
That's
so
awesome.
much.
I remember growing up reading like my first set of books or whatever. It was like a whole series, and it was the Book of Shadows was the first one. I don't know. It was like a whole thing that now my daughter has. But I remember I was like, oh my God, I got through it. And it was just one of those like $3.99 books at the store when I lived in New York. And I was like, oh, let me grab it and just see what this is about. And then it just intrigued me because of everything that I learned, because as she learned, I learned it. And I thought, oh, okay, there's just a lot to learn, just a lot about life within it, you know?
Most definitely. It's funny. When I first started dating Ryan, she was interested in this stuff. And obviously with you, Nicole, she knew a little bit about Wicca. And I was so Christian and wasn't even funny. And like I made her throw away her books. Like that's where my mind was. You know what I mean? And now look at me now, I'm on a damn Zoom call talking about Wicca 10 years later. So,
progress. We've all made so much progress here.
How you evolved.
You won.
I mean, like buying all those books back. You're like, here, babe. Here.
I know. I asked her the other day because she had some book about something. I was like, what happened to that book? She was like, you made me throw it away. I was like, dang.
You're gonna have to start slipping them back in there.
Right.
I'm sorry, babe. Here you go.
Surely. Hey, we grow. Okay. Before we go, I do got some witch stuff that I want to drop because I think people out there might be interested. And it's all random stuff, but you know, information is power, right? So, okay. As far as like punishment for magic and witches back in the Egyptian and Babylonian days, this is one of their codes that they had. I thought this was interesting. So if a man or woman has put a spell upon another man or woman and it is not yet justified, he upon whom the spell is laid shall go to the holy river. Into the holy river shall he plunge. And if the holy river overcomes him and he is drowned, the man or woman who put the spell upon him shall take possession of his house. If the holy river declares him innocent and he remains unharmed, the man who laid the spell should be put to death. He that plunged into the river shall take possession of the house of him who laid the spell upon him. That's Egyptian and Babylonian law. About
that sounds like a tongue-tied twister. I don't understand it at all.
It's kind of tough. That's why I read it slow.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Wicca is the fastest growing religion in America. Plain and simple. There's over 1.5 million Wiccans currently in America, and the trajectory is rising, whereas every other religion is declining. So I thought that's pretty interesting. Saudi Arabia is the only country in the world that still has witchcraft and magic punishable by death. So probably not going to do like a retreat out in Saudi Arabia anytime soon.
No way. No way.
Right. Let's see here. Oh, the current estimate of people who've been executed for witchcraft ranges from 35,000 to 50,000 people total. That's from the witch trials, the Inquisition, all these different.
What happened to thou shalt not kill?
No, but the Pope said if it's in the name of Christ, it's okay. So just putting that out there. This one's interesting. In India, the existence of witches was a belief in a central part of India where witches were feared and were supposed to be engaged in antisocial activities. They were also supposed to have the power to kill people by feeding on their intestines and causing fevers in cattle, among other evils. Therefore, according to the population, the cure to their disease and sickness was the elimination of these witches who were seen as the cause. The practice of witch hunt among them was more brutal than any other place. They were forced to eat human excreta and drink blood before throwing them into flames. So that is India.
And can I add that there was that whole time when they were getting rid of the witches and the cats because they said that the cats had a attachment to that. And then there was the whole plague that started because all the rats were like too much. And people started getting sick, but they didn't realize that till way later.
And completely off topic, but since you brought up rats, rats are actually the true cause of the plague that they said have killed, however many millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's another show. Last thing is that in the United States, and I don't have all the states, but I was able to find these, it is still illegal to do fortune telling, tarot reading, and psychic work for money. New York, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, California, and Louisiana.
New York.
California.
Yep.
Yeah, but Lilydale is in New York, like a huge psychic community. So how
Yeah.
are they, right?
They would have to go through legal channels to get legal permission to actually do it for money.
Okay.
Because these states put in different acts to what they say is to stop people from fraud, from trying to tell people's fortunes or future for money and scamming them out of their money.
Can you read it one more time, RL, please?
I wonder
Yeah.
why it's not in the Bible Belt.
All right. Well, like I said, I didn't check every state. I mean, I literally had to go through every state, but this is what I found. But some of them are Oklahoma, Louisiana are pretty much Bible Belt states. New York, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, California, Louisiana.
But you cannot do what?
Fortune tell for money.
Okay, that's
Tarot reads, and any type of fortune telling goes. I mean, that's psychic work, that's medium work.
yeah. Well, you got them all over.
Right. I mean, California is the one that really jumped out to me. Like,
Yeah,
for real.
that's crazy. Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like they got police out there looking for that. It's just one of those things that are still written in the legislature.
That's crazy.
So
Yep.
I have been to the UAE, and I think because it's still a patriarchal society, that makes sense to me. My sister lived there for 5 years, and you know, the women have to cover their hair. Only their husbands are allowed to see their hair. No man except your husband is allowed to see your skin. So as an American there, I had to make sure my arms were covered, my legs, you could wear like to your calf, whatever that's called. But yeah, she had to be really, really careful living there, not to offend the culture.
That's crazy. They don't even let women drive there yet, do they?
You know, I don't know if it's an Arab woman can drive, but my sister drove, but she also had to be with my brother-in-law. A lot of places she didn't even try to go by herself because she didn't want to get arrested, I guess.
Wow.
Makes me think of that movie, Not Without My Daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Me and my movies.
Crazy.
I'm always like, ooh, a movie. Yeah. So, I mean, I think witches is so important. Hey, Darko, what up? Darko joined in. So yeah, witches, Wicca, wise women. I think that the first thing that I read in the beginning was just, if you want to go back, watch it again in the beginning, just because it was really powerful to think about how much we allow, and I'm going to say this word, misinformation.
Watch out, PayPal.
Allow it to go down to where we are now, to society and society's point of views that we're going to see tomorrow. But basically, like, what a shame. And to think that so much is still happening now. It's just laced with other things. But that control factor of not wanting other people to have control and not wanting people to have power and not wanting people to do things like homeopathically. It says a lot. So yeah, I think that's all for witches today, unless you guys have anything else.
I have one last question that maybe I could. So not to put gender on the word witch, but like, when you talk about a male witch, is it a warlock or is it a wizard?
I thought a warlock is no, that's mortal.
But they added that later because he's still a witch. They added the warlock part and I think that comes with the movies and the whole.
So is a wizard equivalent to a witch? Because they're wise, right? Like witch
Right.
means wise, right?
On a
Wise
higher
woman?
level. Like, yeah, I would say it's like a more of a mystic person,
Okay. Okay.
I'll have to look that up.
right?
Oh, yeah.
We'll look at that for tomorrow, but that's a good question because I did read on the whole the names that were put on as far as for men goes and stuff, but I mean you can
Well, and
easily be a witch
Joanna,
man.
yeah, well, even though a majority of the witches that were burned at the stake in the 1600s were women, they did burn some men. And I mean, what, Giles Corey was the one who got stoned. So,
And some of the men carried the information and held it and were quiet about it for a long time until they were able to put it out. And that's why symbolism is so important too, because they started using symbolism because they didn't want to get, messed up by the Inquisition or the religion or whatever.
Wow.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy because when we were talking about the power and the people like wanting to program and hold power over us and what have you. RL had an awesome live on Twitch last night talking all about the powers
Of the government.
It's like we're all so entangled, guys. We're quantumly entangled. I love it.
Yeah, I was able to catch a part of that last night. But yeah, it's all about like the power. Remember, guys, the power is within you. You have the power. We are all like individuals, but collectively, we're still all just one. And one loses its power, it just becomes weaker and weaker. That's like how I see disease, right? But if you realize your power, you are fully in that self, in that your whole self is embodying that unconditional love, then it just attracts more of that, and then we can just be that one unconditional loving being that we are, right? But in the meantime, love and light to those that aren't. And we just continue to do what we do. So thank you guys for watching, and love your Life Tribe world and out there. We will be back tomorrow with day 3 for society's point of view and some demystifying definitions and languages. Thank you guys for joining us. We are out.
Thank you.